Hello, everybody, and welcome back to another episode of the Krol Show. Today, I have a former UConn football player, pastor, and someone who's starting his own church in New Haven, Connecticut.
Danbury, Connecticut.
Danbury, Connecticut. Sorry. Paul, how
Oh,
are you today?
I'm doing great, Nick. How about you?
I'm wonderful. I'm excited for this one. There's a lot there. That's a pretty welcoming intro. So, let's start at the beginning, I guess. So you were playing football at UConn. That is really where the story essentially starts, right?
The fun part about this, the story starts actually at track practice,
Oh,
believe
okay.
it or not. So I'm doing sit-ups off the side of a pole vaulting mat. At the end of every practice, you get to do an ab workout. And on this particular Friday, our lifting coaches, strength coaches said, listen, go upstairs, get your ab workout together, all the throwers, and see you next week. So the ab workout is you're sitting off the side of a pole vaulting mat. Someone's holding onto your legs. Pole vaulting mat, I would say, is about 3 feet off the ground, padding, and your upper body hangs off the mat, and you do a sit-up. Except on the way back down, you catch the medicine ball and go parallel to the ground and throw it back to your teammate. So it's really intense. It's a phenomenal workout. Wouldn't suggest it, though.
I know exactly what you're talking about. I've done similar things, just a different setup. It was on a decline bench, but
right. So we're using a 16-pound medicine ball, and one time I caught the ball, fell backwards, slipped out of my friend's grip, and slammed my head into the track with the medicine ball. So I had a traumatic brain injury, a closed brain injury, and I had severe memory loss and post-concussion syndrome for about 2 years. Dizzy spells, headaches, vertigo, insomnia. That night was Midnight Madness at UConn, and it's a big event. And neuroscience has really taken off in the last 10, 15 years. And I guess they say with each war, there comes some type of new health science or whatever. And neuroscience really has grown since the Iran and Iraq, and Afghanistan wars. And I got to be, one of those guys who was at the front end of the curve there, meeting with neurologists and neuropsychologists. I forgot smells, which is the strongest sense tied to memory.
Wow, that was what I was just about to ask. Is what did memory loss entail? Was that short term, long term?
So it was both. So I forgot how to drive. I forgot my dog's names. I forgot places, people. I remembered my immediate family, my best friends from high school and home, and the people I lived with at UConn, my floor, and that was really about it. And it's I don't mean incredible in a good way, but it's just like this otherworldly, it's like ethereal experience where you're in la la land at first. At first, I didn't even realize I was forgetting things. It's like ignorance is bliss, right?
So you just said forgetting. Did it get worse?
At some point you recognize you're forgetting things, and then you start to then it sets in this is not good.
Yeah.
Because at first it's like, well, whatever. I guess I have to go to class. I'm like, well, where's my books? What am I looking for? What am I doing? And it's this cascading event. You're like, oh, I'm not even going to class. And people are like, you going to class? I'm like, I don't know. Like, what are you doing later? Like, I have no idea.
Did you recognize people and stuff too?
Just my immediate circle and my closest friends from back home, and then my family. But that was about it. I think I remember calling my mom. This is a funny story. I was like, hey, Mom, was at track practice. I think I got a concussion today. And, hey, Mom, calling you, just got out of track practice. I think I got a concussion today. Hey, Mom, calling you from track practice. I think I just got a concussion today. I think I said about 6 times. She laughed. She called me back laughing. And she was like, well, are you hurt? Like, what's really going on? I was like, yeah, I was at track practice today. I think I got a concussion. And obviously that set off alarms at her. She was frightened, scared. It was not a fun.
How many years ago about was this?
This is 2006, late October of 2006.
Okay, so 14-ish years ago.
Yeah. Yep. So
Wow.
It was quite a time, and then you go through this thing where you're trying to survive. Every day is like survival. Like, you don't think you're gonna die, but you can't function like you used to function. Like autonomic functions where you could talk and still hold a cup in your hand. I remember once I was home and I just dropped a cup of cookies and cream ice cream, which is my favorite ice cream. And it was the last of it. And I just started to break down and cry. I was like, this is the worst.
I was going to say, this has to be so frustrating. Knowing, you were, what, 20, something years old at that point, early
18.
20s and 18. Yeah. And just not being able to do normal functions. I mean, driving, like, what is that like when you go to sit in your car and drive? Because obviously you found out, right? Like, how was that?
So I went home. I got picked up by my parents. They brought me back home at one point. At first, I stayed up at school to see the team doctors and all this stuff, but I went home for a weekend, and they're like, "Oh, you want to drive?" I'm like, "Oh, I'll try." Yeah, it was a short drive. It wasn't like something crazy. I think it was just to the supermarket down the road. And I got in and I was like, "I don't know what I'm doing." Mom was like, what do you mean you don't know what you're doing? I was like, "I don't know where to go or what to do." You're like, where do I begin? It was like that first time when you're 15, 16 years old and you're asking your parent to teach you. You kind of know what you're doing. You've seen it in video games and on TV, but you don't really know. My mom was like, "It's all right. I'll drive." And I didn't want to drive a car anymore for a while. And then,
Wow.
yeah, you try to put on this, I like to call it like sober face. Like, if you're out, you've been drinking too much, and someone who sees you, who shouldn't see you drinking that much, sees you, and you sober up real quick. You're like, yeah, everything's good. I mean, I've actually never drank before in my life. I used to
Wow.
go to this club on campus, Tequila Cove, and I would give other people the shots that they would buy for me. But I've never drank, so I don't know I only know sober. I don't know being drunk. But I can only imagine that sometimes this is what it felt like. You're so out of control, and then when you have to kind of pull it together for a few minutes, you're like, yeah, everything's good.
Yeah.
Kind
I
of
got to say, I respect that you've never drank. That's pretty cool.
not a
That's,
sip. So it's never been my thing. So, I mean, I'm not out here preaching prohibition from the government. We can talk about the merits of drinking or not drinking, but I don't drink. So
yeah, no, I think that's really cool. I've been sober for a while now. I mean, I was never an alcoholic or anything like that. I just don't drink anymore. I stopped seeing the point in it. I'm
yeah.
pretty into fitness. It was just so negative. I
And
just
that was
stopped. But
a big thing for me too, being like competitive in high school and college. I wanted to care about what I put in my body. So that
yeah,
was part of
definitely. I
the
mean,
thing.
football at UConn, that's no small task, or track and field. I mean, anything at UConn, that's really no small task. I mean, how was building up to that aspect too? I don't want to lose the memory thing here, but I mean, that's pretty interesting as well.
A lot of hard work that goes into it. A lot of
Absolutely.
Saturday morning practices when everyone else is home sleeping. A lot of late nights showing up to the high school to work on your throwing technique. A lot of time watching film at home. A lot of time preparing, lifting. The the to try and get to that level, especially once you get to that level, it's not for fun anymore. It's really people's jobs are on the line, whether you're a track coach or a football coach, and they care about it, so you have to care about it. And if
Mhm.
you want to be good, you're going to care about it too. And
And that's a
so
lot at 18 years old.
it's a lot at, you kind of figure out around 14, 15, 16, you're like, okay, I think I have a real shot. It's only a few guys or girls, mostly guys genetically, who really sprout those 4, 5, 6 inches in high school. So you kind of have I'm 6'2". At my prime at UConn, I was 250 of muscle. So you can kind of figure out like, oh, wow, I'm in high school. I'm the biggest kid, strongest kid, one of the faster kids. I can do this. And you decide like, hey, this is what I want to do. And I was lucky to have coaches who would put in the work with me. I mean, meet me before practice, meet me after practice, and just the dedication that you need to do. And that, people think it's all about athletics, and people only see, oh, well, he's just practicing football or he's just throwing in a circle, but it's really just a foundation for the rest of your life. And that's why I really
Discipline.
yeah, I'm currently the throwing coach again at Danbury High School, my home high school again. And it's those things that lay the foundation for the rest of your life to, hey, I'm going to do the little things to make myself better, and I'll see progress to a point where I'm where I want to be in the future. So that's part of the commitment that it takes to be a Division I athlete.
Yeah. Wow. I mean, I knew it wasn't going to be just oh, I don't know. I just tried out. Like, there was a lot of hard work. That was why I asked. Cause I always talk about, you have to work, you have to be committed, you have to have discipline, and really anything you do. And that was just a great example. I mean, football at UConn, track and field at UConn. What did you like more? Just
So track and football are so different. When you play the game, football is more fun. The camaraderie, though, from track and field is different because you have a lot of downtime to talk, to hang out, to get close to each other. When you're at a football field, at a practice, or at a game, it's business. That's all business. It's all business. You don't have any fun until you get to the locker room. You joke around a little bit, but your job's in line, there's money, there's thousands of dollars, tens of thousands, millions of dollars riding on what you do. So if I could go back and do it again, I would love to continue playing football.
Mhm.
Obviously, with the history of that, even with the stuff we'll get into later, no doctor would clear me, but it's okay. I
So
would
did
love to go back and throw again.
when you lost memory, did you like forget? Like, I mean, because like some people fundamentally, like you just know how to catch a football, you train, you practice, like whatever. Did that happen to you? I mean, were you even like a receiver? What was your position?
So, how do I? How do you forget things that you have muscle memory of? I don't know how to say. You don't understand how to do it or how your body does certain things. Actually, you want to know what I really was good at afterwards? Playing Halo. And I don't even really, I just got on sticks again. I mean, I was good at Halo, playing high school, whatever. I was a high school kid, I played video games. And then I just got back on the sticks like not long after my injury, and they were like, take a few days away from the TV. And I got back in. I was like really good. I was like, I don't even know how I'm throwing this across the map and hitting someone in the face. I know it's kind of silly and small, but you don't really understand how you do things. It just kind of comes out of nowhere. It's like if you turned and got like slapped in the face, you wouldn't have any idea how. You just know you got slapped in the face. That's the thing. You're like, oh, I can just do this. I can now do this. It's
Yeah, and
crazy.
at a time where everything you can't do a lot. I mean, I'm sure that felt pretty good. Is even if it's Halo playing a video game, you know, like just that feeling of hey, I can do something well. You know.
And I mean, at that point, the doctors shut you down immediately once they realize what's going on, and there's no more sport activity for a while. And I was able to get back and do some track stuff at the rest of the year, but football at that point is over.
That had to have been pretty emotional. I mean, I remember being a young kid and I got mono, and they said you can't even think about playing hockey for 3 months. And I was like, I mean, I was in tears. I was a young kid. Like that had to have been an emotional time for you too, right?
Since I was a kid, I've had this emotional attachment to sports, right?
Yeah.
Every single football game I've ever lost since I was 8 years old, I've cried. Like, I am hyper competitive. I hate losing. I love winning. And then when you have like dreams of going far and making money and that being your lifestyle, to have it all be like, no, it's over because of a freak accident, it's not enjoyable. It's really this going through mentally not understanding things, mentally not preparing, mentally not being yourself. I mean, it's a whole big like time bomb that all goes off at once. Imagine going through a minefield and then hitting every mine at the same time. So like you're dealing with the mental stuff of not being able to really function, not really being yourself. You're going through depression because first of all the brain's trying to resort itself out. And I had a doctor tell me, you might go through depression. And for months, I felt like for like 3-4 months, I felt like Eeyore, like there was this little cloud that just followed me wherever I went. Everyone else was good. So you have the mental, psychological, emotional, physical, all thrown off. It's so difficult. And you know what also is difficult for family members and close friends too, because they see you and sometimes you look good and you can put on a brave face like, yeah, everything's cool, it's fine. And then if they're around you long enough, they realize you're not good. You're not who you used to be. I mean, I
Yeah.
started like doing stupid things like lying to my friends about stupid stuff. I just make stuff up. Like that's just not me. I mean, I remember I walked in and I stole something from a store one time. I didn't get caught, thank God. But like that's not who I was or anything about me. And I was just acting weird. And when I hear stories, my wife loves Grey's Anatomy. So she's like, oh, this woman had a brain tumor and she was acting weird. I'm like, oh, I get it. I didn't have a brain tumor, but I had a brain injury. And you just start acting not like yourself. And it's so frustrating. You want to shake out of it, but there's no control. You're just kind of along for the ride.
What did the doctors have to say about this? I mean, I'm sure there was thousands of doctors' appointments for all this. I
So
mean,
neurologists and neuropsychologists are here to see at that point what's going on, what part of the brain is affected, what's not okay. Since I hit the front of my brain, a lot of the stuff that comes with maturity, like just acting like an adult or simple things like that, those are affected. That really doesn't develop till you're 25 fully. And I got injured at 18. So that kind of messed up a few things there. I mean, like I said, I was acting out behaviorally, doing some wild stuff. Nothing like, I've never done drugs either, right? So I wasn't the bad kid. But for me, I feel like I'm out of control. And you go to these doctors and they're like, well, all right, well, what is this? Picture a cow in your mind. Like, close your eyes and picture a cow. And you and I can close our eyes, or even just hear, oh, okay, it's white with black spots, or it's brown, it's little fuzzy hair. Okay, you can picture that. But when they're asking me to do it when I have a brain injury, it's like one of two things. Either it's just like white, like a wall, like, oh, you can't see anything, or it's like opening up a filing cabinet and you're picking out the wrong file every time. It's like, all right, describe a cow. You're like, okay, electricity. Okay, and all I can see is a tree, or all you can see is Ben Franklin. You're like, this doesn't make any sense.
Wow.
I know this isn't a cow, but I can't put my finger on what a cow is. It's like having something on the tip of your tongue the entire time and never being able to figure out what you're thinking about.
That has to be so frustrating. I mean, that I am getting mad for you. Like, I can just, because I've been there, and not there. I don't want to ever try and compare any experience I've had to that, but I've had a moment where I like know what I'm going to say. And I'm sure everybody listening is going to relate to this, where you know what you want to say, but you just can't say it. And to have that all the time like that has got to be just, oh my God,
We're
frustrating.
talking like the whole day, not knowing what you're doing, trying to go somewhere and it comes up. And at some point you're able to then like kind of function a little bit. Like, okay, I can get through a day, get through what I'm doing, like kind of like fake my way through a job. And all it is, you're just trying to live, like survival, like mental survival. Again, it's not a life and death thing at this point. There was no like, thank God I didn't pass out, the neurologist said, because that could have been very bad. But like in your mind, it's like, I have to just get through today and make it seem like I'm okay. And then when you're someone who's used to, all right, this is the goal, this is what I'm going to do, I will work hard to get there and I'll be better than I was. Brain injuries don't work like that. Sometimes you plateau out, you never really get better, or sometimes you get better very gradually. And sometimes there's nothing you can do. You just have to wait. You know, with a brain injury, it's so different for every person. You know, you break a leg, they're going to be like, all right, you're in a cast 8 weeks. You know, you sprain your ankle, you're like, okay, you're off of it for 2 weeks and you're going to slowly work back into it. You go to physical therapy.
You have a timeline of hope, essentially.
Right, exactly. With a brain injury, it's like my doctors literally, my neurologist said, I don't know that you're ever going to be better. I don't know that you'll ever be back to 100%, but I wouldn't plan on it.
So what got you through that mentally? Because that has to take an enormous mental toll of just really not having an end in sight. Like what was it that pushed you through that? Did you have great friends, great family? Like there had to have been something.
I had parents back home who I talked to on the phone, and we stayed in touch. And all the time, my parents like, listen, get your life straight with God, and we'll worry about the rest. We'll take care of everything. I had grown up in the church. I had grown up like connected to a strong youth group. And after 9/11, my youth pastor, who was also NYPD SWAT, he took time away. And so that's like 8th grade for me, 9th grade, shortly thereafter. And he was fantastic. I love him. I still love him this day. Great guy, Rich Perez. And he had to take time away. Where we are in Connecticut, everybody lost somebody or knew someone who lost somebody. I lost 2 cousins in 9/11 who were working in the towers. So like that was understandable. Okay, you need time to go get you some help. That's normal. And then a new youth pastor came in, and within about 6 months, he ran the youth group from about 150 kids to under 10 kids. And this is a church of about, it's growing at this point from about 1,000 to 1,200 people. So usually, and I know I'm getting into like my pastoral just here, but
No, that's fine.
Your numbers, your youth group should be at 5 to 10% at least of what your total congregation is. You have about 1,000 people. You should have at least 50 in your youth group, because you can draw just statistically from that. So being at 10 when you're at 1,200, 1,300, I mean, he didn't have any sexual issues, but besides that, I mean, like he's like using kids from the pulpit as negative examples who are sitting in the congregation, like sitting there, youth group, like, this guy stinks. So me, I was like, I stayed till the very end, until the last week. They're like, we're not having this anymore. I'm like, all right, see you later. I'm done. I'm not doing this charade anymore. I'm good here. And while I was always the good kid, quote unquote, I never really had what I would say is a relationship with Jesus, or like a real walk as an adult, as a Christian. And my parents were like, listen, we'll deal with the rest of it. Just get your life straight with God now. And whatever happens, happens, but at least that'll be taken care of. And they had been saying this same thing. We're praying for you. We care about you. We want you to come home. And I'm like, listen, I'm staying up here, talking to team doctors. I'm trying to figure this out. Like, I can do this on my own. Everything else in my life up to this point, I've been able to just fight my way out of. And then all of a sudden a brain injury comes, and like the more you fight, the faster this hamster wheel spins, and you still gone nowhere. So one day my parents said the same thing. I was on the phone with my mom, and she said the exact same thing. She said 1,000 times. She was like, get your life straight with God and everything's going to be okay. And I had this sense of like conviction, not like I was ashamed, but like I knew I needed something different and something better. And I was in a hole and I couldn't get myself out of it. And on the phone, I said, all right, Mom, come home in 2 weeks. And I think she was kind of shocked because she didn't say anything at first. I was like, if that's okay. She was like, yes, okay, please, we'll come up to get you. We got the details. I went to the church I was going to, and that my parents were going to. This is back home in Danbury from Stores. It was a couple hours. And I went to the church that Sunday. I went up to the altar after service, just the stage or whatever. And I just prayed and said, Jesus, I'm so sorry. Just please forgive me of my sins. Just make me right with you. And I stood up, healed like nothing ever happened.
I mean, that's crazy.
So like memories, like memory, working, functioning memory, all back immediately. Like memories, like things that you're like, oh wow, I remember doing a craft with Miguel in Ridgefield at the church when I was 4. Like just insane memories came back. Just all this one moment, this like cascade of like memory. Just these like pictures.
Was that overwhelming?
It's an experience. It's kind of like, imagine having like 1,000 epiphanies in like 10 seconds. You're like,
I'm like picturing like a movie, like when someone, like everything just comes rushing back to somebody. Like, is that kind of what I mean, I can't even come close to relating.
It's this surreal, you know how in like a cutscene, they'll kind of just jump like, and you're just like along this little path, this journey, you see all these things that have just come back to you. That's exactly the only way I could describe it. It's just everything shows. It's like everything shows for a split second, a modicum of time, and yet it feels like an eternity as you're being taken. I know it seems crazy, but in your mind, it takes place. You're just like, okay, all right, I'm good. And my parents are like, what do you mean you're good? I'm like, let's go back to the doctor. And like tests and batteries of tests I couldn't even complete anymore because I would have like I would get so like the worst headaches of physically hurting from trying to think so much. I passed them in flying colors. I went back to community college
the next day, or like the same week or whatever.
I got hurt in October of 2006. I got healed in August of 2008. And I went back to school like 2 weeks later. I enrolled straight in community college. Like that week, I'm like, I'm going to do this. I'm going to go for it. Straight A's the rest of the way.
Oh my God. So so like for the record, I believe in God. I believe this story 100%. Like I've heard of, I don't want to say something similar, but I've heard of other quote miracles, right? There's got to be an enormous amount of people that just don't believe you, right?
You know, I tell people, and no one's like, that's not real. Because I guess they're at the mercy of, you are at the mercy of the science of it, because my neurologists and neuropsychologists go, I don't know what to tell you. And brain injuries don't under any circumstances just like change overnight when you have a traumatic brain injury. You know, a smaller concussion, and I guess it really is no small concussion, but things of a lesser nature can get better. But even those can linger for a long time, and you don't just have full symptoms one day and no symptoms the next day. And to see that, and to see that with people who I'm close to, like my parents and close friends, who could see me when I'm vulnerable and I'm not okay, and then see, oh, I'm okay now. You know, that I can tell a story till I'm blue in the face, but ultimately it's changed me and changed who I am. And out of gratitude, I've just, since I'm like, listen, God, whatever you want to do, wherever you want me to go, I'm in, whatever.
That's
And
awesome.
it led me to like, I ran a homeless shelter for 3 years. I worked with youth and kids. And now me and my wife are starting a church in Danbury. We're working with the Assemblies of God, which is a denomination, like a Protestant denomination. And we're just like, I know me, I'm just in for whatever, like ups and downs. Like it can't get worse than losing your memory for 2 years. Like
Wow.
that's not enjoyable. So, I didn't ask for healing. I just asked for Jesus to forgive me and to make things right. And from then on, just a healing, miraculous healing. I just, out of gratitude, just like, oh, let's do it. I'm in.
Can
Here I
you
am. I
take me
got
through like that week? Like, so you get your memories back, you tell your parents, yeah, I'm good. And they go, wow, what? Like, what was that whole week like? I mean, did you sit in a car and you're like thankful, like, oh my God, I can do this again? Like, was that kind of part of it or?
when you go places and you do things, it's like a video game where you kind of like, I've unlocked a new region. You were just like going in the car, you're like, oh, cool. It's like nothing. It went from, I don't know how to do this to, and I ended up like being taught how to drive again. I had to go get my license at like 20 because the brain injury. But like all of a sudden I stepped back into a car and I'm like, oh yeah, well, duh, I got this. Or I went back to school and I took a statistics class and something popped up and I was like, oh, I already did this. And teacher's like, this is your first semester here, honey. I was like, no, I know it's a
Long
long
story,
story,
sir. Long
but
story.
I got it. And just, I'm like, oh yeah, I got this on a calculator. She's like, have you taken this class before? I was like, not not here, but it's just very different. Like I remember how to do trigonometry now, just out of the blue. You're just like, all right. Or if you drive in certain places, I guess it could be context dependent. You drive at a certain place, and all of a sudden, things that just seemed like you couldn't, did nothing, no significance, no importance. All of a sudden, you're like, oh. I remember being on the second floor of the library playing a video game in April of '97 after the library had been rebuilt. You're like, oh wow, that's very oddly specific. But I remember like Miguel's wearing a purple shirt at the time, and all these things I was like so in depth. They came back, and now like I ended up finished. I did a year and a half at community college, and then I ended up later, a few years later, 2016, I left for Massachusetts and Haverhill to get my bachelor's in, it's a double major in biblical studies and pastoral ministry. I graduated third in my class with a 4.0. And
Congrats. That's awesome.
thanks. Yeah, it's a long journey from 2006 to
I was,
2019.
yeah, wow. I was just going to say, I mean, what a turn of events, you know?
It's a roller coaster, many ups, many downs, but man, it's been a ride. It's been a ride.
Wow. So what was next? So you got your degree, you finished, and then what?
So during that time, I met the woman who is now my wife. She's younger than me. She's she graduated a year after me, so she just graduated this last May. I say graduated like she finished school, but there's been no graduation for her or her class due to
Yeah.
COVID. But she and I decided as the spring was coming to a close, we were figuring out what was next, and we had job offers in Florida. And, we're looking all over the country, New York State, Pennsylvania, everywhere. And we felt like starting a church out of nothing in a place that needed one was what was on our radar. It just felt like the right thing to do. We're both planners, we're both go-getters, we're both doers, we're movers and shakers. We like to grow whatever we're a part of. We were kids and youth pastors at a church in the city of Haverhill where we were going to school. We started with about 8 kids our first week, and by the time we left, we're at 70 plus kids on a good day, and we had probably over 100 unique individual kids who would come in over the course of a month. So we love to do things from scratch and just build it the right way, and that's where we're at now. We're here. We're living in Sandy Hook actually right now, working to find a place in Danbury, and we're working with our denomination to do whatever we can. During COVID, obviously things have been a little crazy. We're online at Danbury Life Church. We're on Facebook, we're on Instagram, we're on Twitter. Twitter, I got to get up a little more on. But
same at or same page on all at
Danbury
Danbury
Life
Life.
Church, yeah, that's it.
Life.
And we're working on starting a church from nothing. We've actually been contacted by board members from a small Cambodian church in Danbury that had us come in and talk to the congregation and the board. They've talked about us coming on and almost, I guess, absorbing them into what we're doing, which is convenient because they have a building and a parsonage right in downtown Danbury, which is where we want to be. So actually, literally, as right now, we're waiting to hear back from them on, their meeting. It's tough for them to get together physically because COVID. So they're having some Zoom conferences and stuff.
What is that like to start a church? Like I'm sure there's some weird legal things. Like it's not like it's an LLC, right?
Right. It's a 501c3.
Oh, okay. Yeah. Nonprofit.
So we being part of the Assemblies of God is nice because you basically get a umbrella 501c3. So the paperwork is much less. And actually, if we were to absorb this other congregation, all their 501c3 paperwork is filed already. So they're already set. So we're going full speed ahead in starting our own church. And we have the backing of our district, which is a group of churches from Connecticut, Massachusetts, Rhode Island. And they're helping us along the way, but this other church has kind of asked us to be a part of what they're doing, or they're being a part of what we're doing. So it could be sped up a lot by assuming what they have and just taking that on, and then through bylaws and constitutions and all these boring things, just voting to become an Assemblies of God church. Without that fast, like ramped up timeline, you really have to just start meeting people and talking to people and be like, hey, the goal is not to just pull people from other churches. The goal is to like get new people to come to your church, like people who don't go to church, like people who don't believe in Jesus to go. Because if you're just pulling people from other churches, you haven't really had any impact. Besides, you've got the disgruntled people from other places or the people who like you personally.
Yeah, I get what you mean by that. It's like you're just kind of, I don't want to poach.
You're shuffling people
word
around.
I can think of there. Yeah, you're just taking them from here and putting them over here. It's
right.
You're not bringing more people into this community.
Right, and that's our goal, is to just be a positive impact in the city of Danbury. My wife has a heart for homeless people. I have a history helping homeless people. We care about families. We care about teenagers and kids, being our background is in youth and kids ministry. And we just want to help families and people who, because everyone's really part of a family, even if you're the only person left of a family, which are some older people. They're the last person left. We want you to be part of our family. We want you to be part of God's family and our own little community here. And that we feel like makes us stronger. As we grow closer to God, we talk about the fruit of the Spirit grows up in us. And those are the things we want to see in society. Loving one another, having peace in a world with no peace, having patience. My goodness, if you've driven on the highway, it would be nice if we had people with more patience.
It's so funny you mentioned that, 'cause I was just having a conversation with somebody the other day about this exact topic. It just road rage. Like when you're on the road, right? Or the average person is on the road. Everybody around you is instantly a moron, right? Like it doesn't matter how good of a person they are, how smart they may be, they're a moron because they're driving a car next to you. And it's like nobody else matters but you and your destination. And I drive into Boston 5 days a week, 4 or 5 days a week. Like I've seen it all. Okay. Like, but I don't understand why. Like, you don't know. This guy might be a really cool person because it's like this. And I know that it's controllable because when you get cut off, right, you immediately get pissed off. Hey, F this guy, whatever. But if you see that that's your buddy, you start laughing. So it's a choice. It's true, right? It's a choice to choose to be angry at this person. But think about next time you get cut off. If it was your buddy, would you be angry? No, you'd be laughing. You'd call him on the phone, be like, oh, I found you. Like,
Yeah. How we react sometimes is natural to certain things through fear. Certain things are natural reactions to stuff that goes on around us. But how we respond to situations is different. And if we responded in kindness and goodness to others when they're in situations that we might not understand or we think they should have done differently, wow, what a world we would live in. How much different it would be if there was gentleness amongst each other, self-control.
And it's crazy if you actually like, so I had this, like, I challenged myself this for the first like few months I was going into Boston. I was noticing I was getting angry or whatever. And because it was just constant, like, it was just so frustrating. But like, I realized like, all right, that's going to get me nowhere. Because I started leaving work. You know where the Tobin Bridge is by chance?
Yep. Oh yeah.
Yeah. Well, that's a disaster right now. It's all sorts of traffic and lanes and all that. And where you would merge, if you were, it was before COVID, so it was just dead stop. And people would always just try and cut right in. And I had this guy one time just like right there with me, and he was like fighting, and he started beeping and yelling. So I rolled my window and I was like, hey man, like, so how a merge works, and like nicely explained it to him. And he was like, okay, yeah, man, I'm sorry. Like, you go ahead. And I was like, no, like, you go ahead, but now, I don't know, maybe next time he'll think about it, or he'll be nice to somebody else, let somebody else go. And I was just thinking like, because I was on the phone with my father, and I was like, how can I change the traffic mentality of this area? Because that's the only thing everybody says they can't stand. You talk to anybody in Boston, like, oh, the traffic here sucks. It's like, all right, well, that doesn't
It
help.
does. It does.
Yeah.
I think that's like Massachusetts and like 495 as a whole. It's just like a death trap. But listen, our thing is each person help another person. Each one makes one. And we talk about like discipling other people, like, and discipling just means like making someone more like yourself, right? And ultimately, as a Christian, as a church, it means making someone more like Christ. I mean, the term Christian was used as derogatory terms like, oh, they're little Christ because of how they acted and how they talked. I would love to be called a Christian if someone says that guy's like a little Christ, the way he talks, the way he acts, because the way I see Jesus act in the Gospels looks really good to me. It's a love towards people. It's correcting them in love. It's caring for them. But I think we look at driving, and that's one of my big things, because again, I'm hyper competitive, dude. Like it's so bad. And in your mind you play these little games like, I can beat this person, I can beat this person, I can beat this person, and you're like, oh wow, I'm just going home. I think I'll be okay if I lose to this car that's driving.
Yeah, right. Like, I don't understand. Like, I just put cruise control on, and I'll notice like people either go whipping by or I go whipping by. I cruise around, 75 to 80 range, and some people are going 90, some people are going 50, and it's just, I don't know. Driving's one of those things we could probably talk about for hours, but
I think a lot of my perspective has changed too. Me and my wife are expecting. I mean, I'm not going to have the baby; she is. But in March, we're having a son. So
congratulations! That's really cool.
That definitely has changed a lot of my perspective too, especially on how I drive. I'm like, okay, I have to get home. I have a wife and child to be here soon. I don't have to fight this guy or scream at him or tell him he's an idiot. So that's just as a game changer for me.
Yeah. I really like the message that you're trying to put out with your church of just, if we can all be a little kinder. I've mentioned this before, but I'm reading a book called Why People Die by Suicide by Thomas Joyner. And he had a part in there, and I'm just going to find it. I did this last time too, because I don't want to screw it up, because it's really good. And I think someone like you especially will really like it. It was just so simple and just so, here it is right here. So he essentially was quoting somebody else. In his 2003 New Yorker article on suicide at the Golden Gate Bridge, Ted Friend quoted psychiatrist Jerome Moto on the suicide that affected him the most. Moto said, I went to this guy's apartment afterward with the assistant medical examiner. The guy was in his 30s, lived alone, pretty bare apartment, and he'd written a note. He left the note on his bureau. It said, I'm going to walk to the bridge. If one person smiles at me on the way, I will not jump. And obviously nobody did, because he ended up dying, and that's why they were there. But it was just crazy how just such little random acts of kindness can make the entire world a better place.
And there's this general assumption that like, if my life was better holistically in whatever area, I would be okay. I wouldn't have the worries that I have right now, and I wouldn't have to deal with some of the struggles. But it gets in the whole mental health issue, but like, that's just not true. I mean, Kate Spade had all the money you could imagine. She was on top of the fashion world. I mean, her purses today are still worth hundreds of dollars, and she killed herself. She had a husband who's going to divorce her, a daughter who hated her, and money doesn't solve those issues. I mean, people think, listen, if I had a better job or I had more money, if I could just kick back and drink some beers and just talk to who I wanted to. Anthony Bourdain got to do that with President Obama. he got to like literally sit back, have some beers, relax, travel around the world and talk about fun stuff and eat fun things. And he killed himself. And it's horrible, but it goes to show that having that stuff isn't what cures either A, mental illness, or B, the depressions or the illness or the difficulties of life.
Mm-hmm.
It's greater than that. And I hope that whether you're rich or poor and you're listening to this, or my goal in the future is to reach all people, rich, poor, anywhere in between. Jesus cares about you. He'll be with you. It's not to say life is perfect and there won't be any problems, but you'll have someone who's there with you. And if bad things do happen, there's going to be something made out of it. There's good made out of it. You know, even a seed has to die for a tree to grow. Like, these things have to come about. And without Jesus, my message to people is, without him, the difficulties of life really are senseless. There's no purpose. But with him, he can bring good from even the darkest of difficulties.
Yeah, I think that money not controlling happiness is a big thing that I try to point out a lot too. I think it has a very an effect, but on the negative side, right? Like, if you don't have money, that can cause other stresses and problems. But having an excess of money and being really rich does not make you happy. Money just makes you more of what you already are, essentially. That was one of the best quotes I've ever heard.
Right.
It doesn't change you. It just makes you more of what you already are. And
to quote the great moral philosopher Biggie Smalls, "Mo money, mo problems." So
oh, that's a good one.
Yeah.
I like your message. I hope your church is a huge success. How far out are you guys actually? Do you have like a date when you can start that?
COVID has slowed everything down.
Of course.
If the church that we are interested in taking us on gets back to us soon, we could be having meetings within the next few weeks. We've just been doing stuff online. You can find a lot of our stuff on Facebook or Instagram. That's easiest to just put them up there simultaneously that way. So we have been meeting in small groups for the last several weeks. So we moved away from online and into on-person stuff. And now that it's gotten too cold to be outside and we can't socially distance well enough in someone's house, because we've outgrown the houses that we've been in, we're going to, yeah, it's a great problem to have. We're going back inside. We are currently on pause waiting for this church to get back to us because we don't want to jump too far ahead and then have to stop stuff and go back. So if they call us this week and say, hey, we're going to get started, it could be as soon as 2-3 weeks. I mean, we would love to be doing something for Christmas. I think ultimately our goal is the new year to start off and kick 2020 goodbye, and 2021 just start off fresh, brand new, and just hit the ground running. And we really believe we could have a significant sized church within a short period of time once we get a building.
That's awesome. What does it look like to you? Like, what would a regular week in your church look like? I'm imagining you guys would have some Sunday services, maybe some child thing. Like, what would you guys do?
So it's all tentative because it's once you get a church building, then you can really get as creative as you want. And we want to utilize it for everybody of every age. So right now, as a church plant, you have to be bivocational. Now I work at Starbucks and I'm I run a shift there. I usually do the early morning. So I'm in at like 5, I'm out at 10:45 or 1 o'clock, depending on the day. But throughout the week of a church, when you can get there, you're studying, you're researching for a sermon or for a series. We would like to do a Wednesday or a midweek service on Wednesday nights. And that's more like teaching and like going through certain topics of the Bible. Sunday mornings, we like to have a time for people to come in before COVID puts a pretty big restriction on just hanging out and getting that fellowship time or just hanging out time at church. So you come in, you have a Sunday morning service, and then we love to scatter prayer services around because we feel like life is difficult. And UCLA study is showing people that pray more, they get better sooner when they're sick. They heal faster when they're hurt. We want to pray with people, and we believe that you're inviting God in whatever situation you're going into. So we would like to have prayer services, whether that be for early in the morning or late at night. Whenever we can get people there, I'll do it.
And what exactly is it for everybody listening? What exactly is a prayer service?
Sure. So prayer service is simple. You come to whatever time it is. So I've had some at 6 a.m. I've had some at 6 at night. Let's say 6 at night. You're done with church, or you're done with work, excuse me, for the day. You have something to eat. You come out at 6 o'clock, and you just take time, and all you do is come in and you say, this is what I'm going through. And you could even, I've had people say, listen, I have something I'm going through, but I don't want to say specifically what it is. I want to keep that to myself. And you're like, they can, they can speak to me as a minister confidentially, but if there's other people there, some people don't feel comfortable saying what they're going through. They say, okay, well, brother so-and-so or sister Maurice or whoever it is, okay, we're going to pray for you. And we'll pray for the 3 things you said, and the one thing you don't want to talk about, God knows what that is, and we're going to pray for that all together in one spirit right now. We're all together agreeing that something's going to change, and wherever you're going, that God will either bring you out of that situation or bring you through to the other side. And you pray together, and you're with each other, and it helps you care for one another. It helps you see how real other people are and the struggles that they go through. And sometimes people just go and they're like, listen, nothing's wrong. I just want to pray with somebody else. And that builds that sense of community. And that's a big thing that we saw, I guess, in the early church. If you read the book of Acts, that people cared for one another. They prayed with one another. They saw miracles happen. Like, I still think they happen today as much as they ever have. And I believe that God will do miracles in other people's lives. So that's what a prayer service would look like for us. You don't have to stay the whole time. You want to stay 10 minutes, get prayed for, leave. You want to pray for someone for 5 minutes and go. That's up to you. It usually starts at like 6, ends at 7, something like that. Sometimes it's a half an hour. It just depends on your facility and your timing.
That's really cool. I hope that brings a lot of people, and I think that that's a really cool thing. I went through some tragedies as a adolescent, I guess. In between 15 and 18, I lost 3 friends, and 2 of them were to a suicide. And one thing that one of my friends did was she took me to a church right after, and we just sat there and we prayed. And I don't know, there was just something about it that felt right. It felt good. And leaving there, I felt a little less pain. I mean, it didn't just disappear, obviously, but it felt better afterwards. So I like that, the idea of that. It wasn't like that with a community or anything. It was just her and I, but it was something I'll never forget.
Yeah. And that isn't that just a small sense of community, one person to another?
Yeah.
You're part of that, hopefully the reason that building was there, and we hope why we have our building in Danbury, is for moments like that to take place, one person to one person. That's what we ask. So many people believe, well, my responsibility is just to invite people to church. I don't have to be a good person outside of, I just put on this facade on Sunday mornings and Wednesday nights, or Christmas and Easter only. And you're like, well, what if you actually lived it out as you walked out? A lot of these problems in the world, whether they're political or social or economic or whatever, I feel like the world would be vastly better if people decided, I'm going to take what I have here and live it out Sunday afternoon through Saturday night. And then Sunday mornings, Wednesday nights, whenever you come to the church, that's more time just to equip you to live a life outside of the 4 walls of the church.
Do you know who Dave Ramsey is?
Absolutely.
Do you plan on doing FPU?
Me and my wife practice that now. We're working on our debt snowball. That is
fantastic.
Yeah, that's something we are going to be. Our goal is to have that as a Wednesday night, one of those teaching things that kind of helps you, like, round you out as a person. Or we've thought about as a small group, making it available to people. For those who don't know, it's Financial Peace University. It's just a way to get on top of your finances. A quick summation is just like paying off your debt, snowballing it, like your smaller bills get paid first, and then you kind of build this momentum going forward. It builds a savings into you, it builds an emergency fund in for you. If someone's out there listening to this, I would encourage you to check that out. If you need more information, obviously Nick's got you here, or you can just Google it online. So,
and as I don't know if you've ever heard any of my previous episodes, I talk about this a ton. I'm a huge Dave Ramsey guy. My wife and I have done the plan. It's fantastic, and it's so foolproof. I actually, at my work, I just recently talked to one of my supervisors, and he's going to let me, I don't want to say teach FPU, but essentially I'm going to teach a financial class for the right. people at my work. And it's FPU. Essentially, I'm going to go over the things that he teaches and just kind of run other numbers and make things more work specific for those guys, knowing, like, around what we all make. And hopefully it'll help some people. I mean, what can you take me through your journey? Because I feel like I talk about this a lot from a perspective of someone who's done. Like, what is it like in it right now?
Okay, so I know Dave like represents this ideal of like, listen, if you have to eat peanut butter and jelly every day for 3 years until you're out, do that. And to me, that's the extreme. I'm not there. I would rather go out to dinner once a week if I can, and like stay in.
Budgeted.
Right, you have to find where you're at. Um, but right now, the only debt my wife and I have are my current student loan debts, and that's it. So that's what we're paying off. We actually just had to put out some money recently. Our insurance switched in October, so we're paying for some of our copays for the baby appointments, and those having a baby is expensive. But now where we're at, we're not paying for any more of that, so we're already capped on our deductible. All that stuff's fine, so we're not paying anymore, thank God. So the rest, so we have a baby, is good to go. So we're rebuilding our current $1,000 savings fund, and we're going to be rebuilding our emergency fund, and we're continuing to just chew away at my debt. And there's been talks of President-elect Biden or Vice President Biden, however people characterize him, the future President Joe Biden. He talked about like eliminating $50,000 in undergrad debt for people. I'm not going to quote on my financial views on that, but if he does, I'll tell you I will owe $23 to the government. So if he does, oh no. If he doesn't, I'm going to do my best to just continue to just pay off as much as I can, as fast as I can. We are pouring money into my car that we still have. One of my cars died recently, so we're driving my wife's Audi, and we're just running that thing into the ground.
That's the way to do it. I couldn't tell you how many beaters I've driven. I mean, I will buy a car that has 170,000 miles on it,
Yes.
And I have people all around me that buy brand new vehicles, and there's a reason why my wife and I just bought a house and they have a car payment. It comes down to your choices.
Absolutely. And listen, Dave says, live life now like nobody else. You can live life later like nobody else, or something very close to that.
Yeah. Live like no one else so you can live and give like no one else.
Exactly. And that's a big thing with him too, is giving back to others. Another big thing.
Yeah.
As a licensed minister with my organization, my tithe, or my 10% of what I give back, has to go to them as an organization, but we still do what we can to give to others. And I think that's a big thing. You know what it does? It helps release the control of money over someone when you give to someone else, saying, this doesn't control me. It controls me so little, in fact, that I can give some away, not to the point where you can't pay your bills, but I can still give some away, knowing that I'm more powerful than money, because money is powerful. It makes people do crazy things.
Yes. Some pretty radical, crazy things, unfortunately, sometimes really good things, sometimes great things. Like, I was actually just recently, I don't want to go too deep into this, but listening to the Joe Rogan, Elon Musk podcast. And it made me think of you, because like, if Elon Musk's neuro whatever chip thing is like, if that was around in 2016, it's like, oh, you probably would have been okay. You would have lost the memory for a day or whatever. But I feel like the experience and all that, I assume you think it was worth it in the end, right?
I'm glad it's over, but looking back, it's made me a better man. It's brought me into a real relationship with Jesus. It set my life on a different path. It's been used to help other people who have struggled, with traumatic brain injuries. And I'm glad I could use the whole experience for something positive rather than just be wandering listlessly through life. Absolutely.
Yeah, that's awesome. I mean, I wish you nothing but the best of luck with your church. That's really cool, really exciting. It seems like it's moving along pretty well. So I wish you guys so much luck with that, and I'm sure you guys are going to have a great community there.
Thank you very much. I really appreciate it. We're excited, and we're ready for this COVID vaccines to kick in and all this stuff to be gone, so we can go crazy and do all the fun things we have planned for when that's done.
And where can people find you online again?
Right now, we're on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram. Danbury Life Church. You can see me and my wife posting stuff. Her name is Dulce. So find us on there. check us out, give us a follow, message us. If you need prayer or anything, you can always message any one of those accounts, and it's confidential. Whatever you say is confidential. Only I get that information, and as a minister, I don't give that information out to anybody else. So feel free to let me know if I can pray for you or anybody else in any way. It can be big, it's life-threatening, it can be small, and you just need a prayer to get through a tough moment. We're here for you.
Fantastic. Thank you so much for coming on. I really appreciate your time and this interview. Thank you.
Nick, thanks so much. I appreciate it. God bless you. Everything you're doing here on your podcast, and you and your wife going forward in the future, man.
Thank you. God bless.
Take care.